So I'll just start out by saying that, first of all, one of the new things when you get into this role, you take over in this position is dealing with the media every day. And I want to say thank you to all of you. I think that, it's been good to get to know you guys a little bit more personal on a personal side and establish some more relationships. And so I'm thankful for that. I know you guys have a job to do just like I do. And you guys have been very respectful, and I appreciate that. So I also want to thank my staff. They've done a really good job this year, I think, with all the change and the turnover that happened during the year. So I want to thank my coaching staff. Obviously, a terrific job they've done this year. So I'll take questions now.
So have you had any clarity to your situation?
No, I haven't. I think that that'll be something that'll be addressed as we move forward here. Right now, obviously we're doing our exit meetings today, and the players are taking care of their physicals, so that's stuff that will be addressed hopefully in the near future.
Joe, I assume this is something you want to keep doing, that you've got a plan in mind and something that you've got kind of laid out for what you would do going forward?
Yeah, of course. I think that it's something that I really enjoyed this year. I was given an opportunity, after 20 games or whatever it was there, and I really enjoyed it. Obviously, it didn't turn out the way that we all wanted it to. There was a lot of moving parts, like I've said before, but definitely. I look forward to see what happens here in the near future, and we'll see where that goes.
Obviously, Tuesday night was more about the game. You had 36 hours or whatever. Is there anything that's stood out as you reflected or that you've been able to reflect on?
Well, there's lots of things I think that stand out. Obviously, being back, getting a second opportunity as a head coach, and you look around, and that's really what you're looking for is another opportunity, and you hope that when that opportunity comes, you can make the most of it. And I thought that we did a pretty good job after the first 20, 25 games or so when the change was made. I think that we got the team moving in the right direction. Obviously, around the new year, it got away from us a little bit. We probably had some games where we should have grabbed some points where we didn't. And then the deadline came, and the organization decided to make some moves in a different direction. So, overall, I think that like I said, I've enjoyed coaching this team. Great group of guys to work with. I thank the organization, management for the opportunity that was given to me, and we'll see what happens.
It seems like team defense in particular was on the upswing after you took over, and then maybe right around that New Year time started. So, do you have a feel for why that happened and why you weren't really able to get it back?
It's a good question. I think that you look over those 20 or 22 games, whatever it was there. We were like 1 or 2 in the league as far as goals against at that point. We really did a nice job, and it's not just about like the defending in zone. Everybody thinks about team defense; they think about defending in your own zone. It's not necessarily the case. There's other things that factor into playing team defense. It's managing the puck, it's executing plays at the right time, it's game management, all the things that I've talked to you guys about during the course of the season. And it just seemed like at times we weren't able to sustain that solid commitment for 60 minutes, whether it be execution or just sometimes lack of details, whatever the case may be. We just weren't able to sustain it over the 60 minutes of a game like we would have.
Joe, when it comes to David Pastrnak, obviously after the trade deadline, whether he was ready for it or not, with Charlie McAvoy and him suffering an injury, it kind of became his team for a bit, or his group. Did you have a conversation with him? Did he have a conversation with you at any point about kind of taking the reins, or did it just happen, or was there ever a meeting or a chat with him?
Well, I always have conversations with players, and certainly I had one with David. I'm not going to go into the details of the conversation, but yes, I had a conversation with Pasta about what his role now is with the group, especially after the deadline. And I thought David did a terrific job down the stretch here as far as leading the group on the ice and off the ice. It wasn't an easy situation for him. We lost, some notable leaders at the deadline. But having said that, Pasta continued his consistent play on the ice, even ramped it up even more. And then off the ice, took on more responsibility, shouldered more responsibility off the ice too. And he did a good job. I was very impressed with it.
Would you be willing to come back next year from your previous role, or is now focus just head coaching job, whether it be you or someone else?
Yeah, that's a tough question to answer. I think we'll see what happens, and like I said, in the near future, we'll address that if and when that opportunity comes up.
Is there anyone else that stood out to you down the stretch here in terms of stepping up as a leader, whether that was vocally or by example?
Yeah, there's a few guys that I think shouldered and took on more responsibility as the season went on. And I mean, we had some guys that came in that were more vocal right from the start, and that carried on during the season. Other guys lead a little bit more by example, like a guy like Elias Lindholm, who is a little more quiet on the quiet side, but he leads by example. You got Zadorov, who leads a little bit more vocally at times. A couple of new players that we brought in this year, but and then not having Hampus Lindholm around, one of the leaders. There's a guy that probably would have brought more leadership to the group as well, and Charlie missed some significant time at the end. Another leader, right? But no, I think sometimes when you look at that internal leadership, when you lose guys that we did, collectively, more guys have to step up, and I think that we had a few players that tried to fill that role.
It looked like you might be getting Lindholm, Hampus back at some point. I think maybe it was January, and obviously had some kind of a setback. Did that take the wind out of the team sails at all, do you think?
No, I don't think so, Steve. I think that injuries are part of the game. We all know that. Teams lose. They lose players. Teams lose significant players that they count on. Obviously, it's a blow to the team when you lose someone like Hampus, but no, we didn't feel like it was, as a group, you just have to keep playing at that point. There's nothing you can do about that. It's the old next man up mentality there. And, obviously, when you lose one of your top defensemen, of course, it affects your group, but we tried not to let that get us sidetracked too much.
Joe, when it comes to exit meetings and interviews, what do you find most beneficial about those? And a lot of times you find out things that maybe you weren't aware of during the season.
I think you can, but I'll say this. I think with those meetings, if you're doing your job like a coach should be doing his job during the season, the players already know where they stand. They should know where they stand. And I think that those talks that you have during the season, there's really not much I don't see like on the end of a coach to unravel at that point. Like I said, I think it's more about keeping those lines of communication open during the season as best you can, so players know where you're coming from. You know where they're at. Maybe they're having a bad day, and you need to find out what's going on in their life. So, I don't think they're as beneficial for the coach per se.
What are the mechanics of that today? Is it one-on-one with you? Do you do it as a staff? How's the?
Well, I'll be talking to guys individually here and there on a little bit more of a casual, in a more of a casual environment, and then management will do their thing with the players.
Joe, did you have the opportunity to talk to the guys that got sent down to Providence yesterday before they left, and what was the message to them, given the short time that you got to spend with them up here?
I did not have time to talk to them yet, but I will. I plan on reaching out to those players individually the next day or two while they get ready for their playoff race here, and I'll have a message for each player before they start in the playoffs.
Picking up on that, I don't know the number of kids here, 8, 10, 12 kids. Some came up, went down, handful were still here. Is it a generic, not generic, but general message to them in terms of what's going to get them over the hump here to be NHL roster player?
Like I said, I think that the meetings and the conversations that you have with those guys while they're here, not so much after the fact, but while they're here, what we see, what we think can help them get to the next level, what we can do to prepare them to help them be NHL players, those conversations have already been had. And they have, I talk to players after every game. I'll grab a young player and talk to him the next day and talk about his game from the night before. So I think that those players that have been sent down to Providence, especially the younger guys, but not just young, even some of the older guys, but the younger ones, they know they know where they stand and they know what's expected of them, I think, for them to have an opportunity to be a regular.
And is there a summation, do you find yourself telling the same things to different kids? I mean, is it speed processing, is it strength?
No, I think for each player it's different. I mean, I think there's a couple of things that stay in line with each player. There's no question. You know, for some of the younger guys that are 20 years old or 21, yeah, I've mentioned before, a lot of it's just becoming stronger. But there's other aspects of the game, I think, for each player that are different, that are going to help them become regular NHL players. Not every player is the same, as you know. Everybody's got to carve out a niche in this league. You know, not everybody's going to score 50 goals. Not everybody's going to be a penalty killer. Not everybody's going to be a defensive forward. So you have to find out what you're going to be and be the best at it. That's how you can have success. That's how you can have, you know, you can sustain yourself in this league if you do that.
In that vein, what's the message to a guy like Mason Lorad, who obviously, you know, did some really good things offensively this year, their numbers were good, and has aspirations to want to play in all situations and be like a top four guy that plays a lot of minutes, but obviously the plus minus, which is always a very argued statistic, was rough for him by the end of the season, and you could see pockets where away from the puck and, you know, defensively, he definitely, you know, needs some improvement.
I think that's the message right there, and that's what we've talked with Mason about before on a number of occasions is, you know, there's a lot of potential there, right? I think that he has the ability to move the puck. He sees the game well offensively. There's a lot of things that you can't teach in that player. There are things that he continues going to have to work on and value in his game, and one of them is being stingier defensively, being harder to play against defensively, just things that come along with experience too as you play more games. Taking the rush, reading the rush accordingly sometimes. Younger defensemen sometimes, you know, they may get outside the dots, they may catch themselves standing up in certain situations where they should be accepting. Just little nuances like that. I think that the more you play, the more that you'll get better in those experiences, but also just understanding and valuing how important it is to defend in this league. And the Bruins, we've always prided ourselves in being a team that plays well defensively. Doesn't matter who's come through the doors here, all the defensemen, all the forwards, we've always valued and take pride in playing away from the puck, and that's something that we'll continue to work on with our young guys.
Do you believe that those defensive philosophies and those experience things that you're talking about, that's something that anybody can learn, or, you know, most players are going to be able to learn as they go through the course?
I believe you can learn it, and it's just a matter of willing to accept it and do it on a consistent basis and buy into it.
Sorry, Steve.
Elias had some success down the stretch here, but, you know, obviously it took him a while to find a niche. Why do you think that was, and how much credence you put into what he was able to do down the stretch?
Well, I mean, Elias got off to obviously, he'd be the first one to tell you, a slower start this year. I think he missed some time in training camp, getting himself acclimated to camp. I think he was dealing with an off-season injury that started him off a little bit slower, too. Coming to a new team, a new organization, sometimes that takes time. I think that, you know, as the year progressed, he moved around quite a bit during the lineup. You know, we had him playing in different roles and with different players. I think down the stretch there, just to put him back with Pasta and Geeks, I know that line was experimented with at the beginning of the season, but it wasn't that long. It was maybe a handful of games, if I remember correctly. And so sometimes it takes longer than that. But at the same time, you know, you don't have a lot of patience and time when things aren't going well. You have to switch things up. But I think that what he provided down the stretch was, like, Pasta and Geeks are playing really well offensively. It gives those guys the opportunity to lean or tilt a little bit more that way, knowing that they still have security as far as defensively. You know, somebody who's going to play underneath the puck, somebody who's going to be reliable defensively for them. And he got more confidence as down the stretch there. And again, like you said, I know that those games at some point become less meaningful in the standings. But they're not less meaningful as far as how we look at it as an organization and how we talked about it with the players, the importance of those games down the stretch, the last 10 games or whatever it was. And so I do think there's some value in there as far as watching him play with those guys and just to see if that's a possibility moving in the next season.
You
So there was such a,
Sorry. Okay, I just wanted to, an answer, you said a couple of questions ago about talking to guys throughout the season. Your first go-around as coach, you know, the league has changed and the way players are coming in and the communication with coaches. Did you do that back then as well? Is that something you watched other coaches do, head coaches, and feel like it's beneficial, or have you always kind of been?
I think when I got my first opportunity, I was about 39 or 40 years old, and I said this before to a number of people. I think when I got the second opportunity, I always felt like the part about developing and establishing relationships with the players was something that I wanted to improve on as a coach. I thought, the first go around, I felt there would need to be a little bit of some distance between myself and the players because I was still so young and not that far removed from the game playing wise. But realizing, and as you learn and grow from your experiences, as you move along during, the last 10, 11 years coaching after that, you realize the importance of those relationships with the players. And I think that's something that I tried to work on and tried to implement more this time around, the second time around with the guys. And obviously, too, coming in from an assistant, being an assistant here for that long, the guys, they know who you are. And you're not going to change who you are. You have to change obviously some things about how you talk to players and handle different situations, but you have to be true to yourself. And so that is one thing that I tried to be better at this time around was the relationship part with the players, so that when you're making hard decisions and difficult choices, they know where you're coming from and that they understand that you have their back at the end of the day. Yeah.
There was such an unusually large number of players that had this year coming up from Providence, especially compared to years past. Just how does that challenge a team when it's not a development league, but you have to have all these players come up and maybe they're not ready? That's no fault of them.
Yeah, it brings me back to a little bit when you coach, in the AHL at times. But I think that, I think the philosophy, the mindset for us was when we were transitioning and bringing in some of these younger players to see, so the organization could take a look at them and see where they're at in their development. The one thing I tried to do was, if they made a few mistakes along the way during the course of the game, was get them back out there. Typically, that may not happen in a normal situation, right? I mean, if you're in the middle of the season and, sometimes those decisions, that's where sometimes a young player, if he's doing the wrong thing, and you may have to say, okay, you may have to watch for a little while here, because at the end of the day, ice time is really what you have as a coach. But getting them back out there and saying, listen, this is the mistake you made, go back out, now go out and let's not let that happen again, right? Like, mistakes happen. I've said this before, and of course, the best players make mistakes all the time. So we can't just blame young players all the time for mistakes, but there's certain more details and habits that they have to learn along the way, I think, and those are the things that you're really trying to instill with those young players. But getting them back out there again, letting them know that if they made a mistake, that you had the confidence in them that they were going to try to be able to reset and get back out there and improve themselves again.
Fabian Lysell from the
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the name.
Fabian Lysell, from the time that you saw him to the end of the season, were there any lessons that you were trying to impart on him, like maybe like learning moments, teaching moments that you thought you saw him really improve on and take those lessons to heart?
Yeah, I think there's a few. I think the one thing that I noticed with Fabian was that when he did something that wasn't right, when he came back to the bench, he already knew it. And that's a good sign. When a player recognizes that, it's a step in the right direction, I think, for a young player in his development. If he comes back to the bench and before you can even get to him, he's like, I know, I made. So that's a good sign. And because that happens, like I said, mistakes happen in the course of a game. So for the ability for them to recognize it and say, okay, I can correct this, we can rectify this mistake and move forward, that's a good sign in their development.
Joe, looking at the power play, what do you think was some of the factors that those units kind of struggling to get this season?
I think one thing was our entries. When I look back, I think that once we established zone time, I thought we were fine. When I say fine, I mean, I don't think it was executed at a high level, but I thought that we struggled for the most part getting in clean on our entries, which if you don't in this league, you go back, you start breaking out again, you come in again, now you're chasing it a little bit. And I think that's one of the areas that, we tried to work on, we tried to be better at, but we were never really that clean as far as our execution on our breakouts coming into the offensive zone on the power play.
Any regrets, any decisions you'd like to have back?
No, no. You can second guess a lot of things, I think, as a coach, but I think you always go in and you try to make the best decisions first and foremost for the team, then the individual, and you put a lot of thought to what goes into every decision that you make on a daily basis. I have a lot of, you know, our staff, my staff and I, we communicate all the time about all the decisions. And I mean, you can look back and say, yeah, I wish I did this or did that. But at the end of the day, as long as you're putting a lot of thought into what you're doing, you're prepared with your decision, I think you can live with it. I'd like to thank my family too, just for the support that I got this year. I'm a local guy here too, so it was pretty special for my family as well.
I was gonna ask you actually, like, you have fans stopping you at a gas station or a convenience store or a grocery store?
No, not really. No, no, not really. No. No, I mean, yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, you're in that situation, you get recognized a little bit more, but yeah, you have to keep the ball cap down. You know.
Sorry if you've been already asked this, but just how much have you enjoyed the length of time that you've been here, and how much do you hope it continues?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate, Joe. I think that just finishing up over a decade here and being part of a great organization. I think that you know the Bruins have treated me very well, and they've been very loyal, and I feel like I've been loyal too. It's worked both ways. So no, I've been really lucky to be in this business and be with the same team for that long. You're pretty fortunate as an individual. Sorry.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, thanks everybody.